Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, the 4th District in Oklahoma. This is another one of our congressional weekly chats. It's been a fairly busy week this week in Congress. We've sort of cleared the deck of a lot of suspension bills, and uncharacteristically, the major item on the floor is something that Republicans and Democrats actually agree on and have worked together well on, and that is putting together an additional aid package for the heroic people of the Ukraine. All of us have been inspired by their spirited defense of their liberty, of their land, and certainly of their country. And I think they've done much better than anyone expected. Part of that is due to a serious preparation, which the United States since 2014 has been part of in terms of training and advising Ukrainian forces. But at the end of the day, nobody can fight for people like they fight for themselves. And in this case, we've seen the Ukrainian people step forward. I'm proud that the United States and so many other countries, particularly the NATO countries, have leaned forward to provide the Ukrainians with the wherewithal that they need and the humanitarian assistance that they require. Look, they are still in the fight of their lives, and with an adversary that vastly overmatches them in terms of manpower and firepower on the battlefield. But this is an heroic effort, and one that I think the Ukrainians, with enough help, might be able to win. And certainly it's very much in our interest to help a free people defend that freedom and defend their land, and frankly send a message to aggressors like Russia in this case, and potentially to China should they try to do something similar with respect to Taiwan, that the free world won't stand idly by, that we will not only sanction them economically, but we will provide those who are being assaulted with the weapons that they need. So this week will end with a huge bipartisan vote in support of Ukraine, and billions of additional dollars committed through the House, and the Senate will follow this in relatively short order. Second area of increasing concern is, of course, the crisis on our own southern border. We've watched as the number of people coming across the border illegally has more than quadrupled. It's up almost 500% since President Biden took office in January of last year. Along with that comes human trafficking and an incredible increase in the amount of drugs, particularly fentanyl, flowing into our country. This is a man-made, policy-driven crisis. That is, the president deliberately and systematically dismantled the policies of the last administration and have given us a measure of security on that border. Things like the border wall, things like the wait in Mexico policy, things like Title 42, which the administration is considering abandoning. Title 42 simply allows us to respond to the conditions of the pandemic and immediately expel people that come into the country illegally. And most of the people coming in, frankly, have not been vaccinated, let alone checked for COVID. So it's perfectly appropriate to use these kinds of tools in this sort of situation. And even, frankly, many Democrats have now broken from the president on this issue. I think they're beginning to realize at least the electoral consequences of this reckless policy that they've pursued and supported as a party for many, many months. And so I think that's going to be a hot button issue in the weeks going forward. You're going to see Republicans try to force votes on this issue. I think you're going to see Democratic unity crack. Hopefully we can persuade the administration to pull back from some of its short-sighted policies and reconsider what they've done on the southern border, take responsibility for it, and reverse course. Finally, on the more hopeful front, today, which is Thursday, April 28th, by the way, my birthday, we're going to have a meeting of the 4 top appropriators. I'm a senior appropriator, but not one of the top 4, but I admire the 4 who are, and they're going to begin discussion. So hopefully we can finish a budget by the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th, or certainly the end of the calendar year. The last thing the country needs right now is a federal government shutdown, but we need to be a lot more responsible in our spending than the president's current budget. And we've received that recently, and that budget does what his last budget did. It spends too much domestically and fuels inflation. It doesn't spend enough on defense. Democrats once again have taken out all the Hyde pro-life protections. They won't get any appropriations bills passed until those are restored. And frankly, there's a lot of other questionable items that they've added to the budget that they can't pass across the floor, so they're trying to sneak into must-pass appropriations bill. So that'll be an interesting battle that will consume the summer and the fall, but it's a battle that needs to be fought, and it's a process that needs to be completed. Now, we need a fully funded government, and we were able to come to an acceptable compromise on last year's budget earlier this year, and hopefully we can do that again. The process, at least, is beginning sooner. The players that are critical to this know one another better. They've completed a successful deal. That's important. So hopefully this can move a little more smoothly and a little faster. But in many respects, the main contours of the legislative struggle over this legislation will be very, very similar to the one we simply just completed a little bit earlier this year in March. So with that, we'll keep you posted as things go along. And again, I would just tell you there are things that do unify us. The struggle in Ukraine is one of them. And I asked you to remember the people of Ukraine who are going through enormous suffering in your prayers and in your thoughts. And certainly to support our country's efforts to help Ukrainians defend themselves. They're fighting a noble and valiant battle for freedom. They deserve our support. I'm very appreciative that they're getting our support from both sides of the aisle.